And thank you for being a student. Um, and we also conduct, for those of you who don't know, PILE conducts coffee sessions, which are 3 times a week. So make sure you are aware of those as well. So that's a lot more one-on-one. This is a lot more of a predefined templatized webinar, which I adapt, but those coffee sessions are very open-ended. You can bring any problem that you have, and we do them 3 times a week. So make sure you join those as well. I think on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, 8 to 9 a.m. Indian time. Okay, let me hide that as well. All right, so we have a good list of problems, and we will definitely solve those. We have issues with timing, we have issues with inference questions. People get lost in the passage. People have issues with main point. And then there's issues with reading complex sentences. All of this we're going to tackle in this webinar. I also want to tell you that it's possible to improve, and it's from a very low starting ability to a fairly high starting ability on reading comprehension, as well as on verbal, and correspondingly on data insights as well. You have 3 data points here. These are actually fairly old success stories, but if you go to GMAT Club, if you go to our YouTube channel, you're going to see tremendous, a humongous number of success stories or data points. Essentially, I think our YouTube channel is about 550 video debriefs, or our video journeys. I won't call them debriefs because they're full-fledged journeys. And in a lot of cases, people have improved from extremely low verbal abilities to extremely high. And we're not talking about, it's taking 6 months to improve. We're talking about, good 150, 200 hours of effort. On the verbal side, about 120, 130, and the remaining on data insights of one that you're looking at for that improvement. But diligence is one of the biggest things that we look for. You can see some of these over here, but then, as I said, on my YouTube channel, there are a lot. We also have some upcoming webinars. We have a free webinar on arithmetic. That's tomorrow. We have a free webinar on GMAT RC, CR, very similar to the webinar next week. Very similar to, today's webinar. This webinar is next week. In this, we tackle both critical reasoning and TPA. We talk about pre-thinking. It's a method that eGMAT pioneered, and a lot of prep companies now adopt that method. It's the most successful method when it comes to answering CR questions. Let me hide this. Then I ask this one question, which is when do you plan to take the test? And you can really see majority of you have more than 60 days. With that, let me go right into the presentation part. I'm going to bring my camera as well. So before we get into this webinar, I'm going to briefly talk about building your study plan. A lot of you are eGMATers. A lot of you probably have your study plan already, but then I also see a lot of people who I don't recognize, presumably. You guys, this is your first experience with eGMAT. So that's something that we'll be happy to do. So you'll get a good idea of how should you plan your study, because a lot of people ask me this question: how much time do I need for the test? So you should be able to see my screen, and typically what we need is a day-by-day plan like this one, and I'm going to build one for you right now. I'm going to click on create a new plan. Okay, so this is a PSP, or a personalized study planner. If you're an eGMAT student, most likely you've seen that because you're required to build one before you get started with your learning. For those of you not eGMATers, this is something we've invested close to $8 million in R&D, and this is one of the small outcomes of small out of many outcomes of that R&D investment. So let's talk about how do we go about building your GMAT study plan, because at eGMAT, everyone builds a personalized study. So let's say your goal is to get to 685, which is kind of the median score for Harvard and Stanford. You're going to set this as target. Then you put in your current score. Let's say you're at a 585 here. So you're looking at a 100-point improvement. And that's from a Sigma X mock test, which is something that we offer, or an MBA.com test. So let's say you've taken a Sigma X mock test. The tool tells you you're looking to go from a 62nd percentile to a 98th percentile. Then we get your current scores. Now, you are in a verbal webinar, so presumably your verbal is not as strong as your quant. So I'm going to tell you 77 in verbal, 83 in quant. And then the tool knows that, hey, given the fact that you've added your verbal and quant scores, your DI score has to be within this range for the total score to be 585. So I add this. And you can clearly see your percentiles here, really strong in quant, weak in verbal, and DI is above average, but not super strong, not as strong as your quant. So this tool understands this, then evaluates various paths that you can take to get to a 585 and gives you the most optimal path. You can see there are about 94 probable paths for you to get there. And from here, it tells you that, hey, the best deal for you is to push your quant score up, and then accordingly, you've got to get your verbal from 30 odd percentile to that 84th percentile, and data insights to that 89th percentile. So I think that's a great recommendation. But if you wanted to take another one, you could use an alternate one. You can build your own as well, and it will tell you how computationally efficient that would be. So we're going to really choose the one that was recommended, because I think most of the time that's a really good recommendation. Even when it's not the best, it's almost 90-95% there. So you can modify this. So it tells you on the verbal side, you have to go 6 points from a 77 to an 83. On the quant side, you're looking at 5 points. On the DI side, you're looking at about 4 points of improvement. And again, this is a chart that's curated just for you, where it tells you that you need about 84 hours in quant, 84 in verbal, 77 in quant, and 82 in data insights. Again, this is done for each student individually. It also tells you on the verbal side, you need about 58 hours in what we call a stage 1 of learning, which is building your foundation, learning how to solve questions properly, and then becoming efficient at solving those. About 16 hours in cementing, and then 10 hours in test readiness. On the quant side, you're going to start with cementing, because you already have a foundation. You're only going to learn those concepts that we diagnose where you have an issue. So you're not going to do the entire course. And then you have a lot of test readiness, because you're looking at 95th percentile here. So that's where that refinement, that precision to get to that level becomes really, really critical. DI is somewhat similar to verbal, but then within DI itself, it's personalized to you. So again, this is extremely personalized for each and every individual. And you can really see that as we get more data, this is even more personalized for you. So you're at a 33rd, 31st percentile in verbal. So I'm going to really put your CR at 40, RC at 34th percentile. Again, this is data that you're going to get from an official mock or a Sigma X mock. Both of them provide this. So it tells you, assuming you're going to put in 20 hours a week, you're going to need about 4.2 weeks for verbal. Then I'm going to move forward here. On the quant side, you can really put in data for your abilities in arithmetic and algebra. I'm going to get your quant milestones here with this. And we'll tell you, oh, you don't need about 80 hours, you need about 66 hours here. You can really see how much time you need in arithmetic and how much in algebra. Arithmetic in the eGMAT context includes number properties, word problems, and advanced topics, which is PNC sets, probability, stats, all of that. Algebra is pure algebra, where you have linear equations, quadratic equations, inequalities, absolute value, and so forth. So I'm going to accept this. I'm going to do the same thing with DI. You're stronger in quant, so presumably you're going to probably do a lot better in these two, and then you'd be worse off in MSR and TPMSR. I think it'd be really low. So with that, we're going to get fresh estimates for DI. You can really see that data sufficiency in GI and TA, you're not going to spend as much time, but then TPA and MSR is where you spend a lot of time here. You accept this. You have refined time estimates here. You can see them on those times have gone down. So you're looking at about give or take around 200 to 15 hours over here, and then it'll ask you the sequence of learning. I'm going to accept this. You can now customize your time. We want to give you something that's extremely trackable. So so this is something where you can really say, hey, on Monday I'm going to put in an hour, Tuesday I can do in 3 hours, Wednesday 3 hours, Thursday 3 hours, and then Friday an hour, or maybe you go out and then on the weekend you can put in more hours. So you can put in about 23 hours. And be very mindful of what you put in, because in a couple of days we will also start tracking if you are actually following this. We are constantly enhancing this, because we want to make sure that you commit to whatever you commit to, you actually execute. Otherwise, we want to make sure that we help you replan, because one of the worst things that can happen in a GMAT prep journey is that you start to panic. In fact, if you are connected with my co-founder Payal, she just did an analysis, and what she found was that only 45% of people who actually people who commit to a certain number of hours actually study that many hours, and this is because we track uh, everything on our platform. I'm going to set this. I'm going to put in the start date. With that, I'm going to get a tentative test date, which is about 10th of July, which I think is really, really good if you're aiming for round one. It's getting to that point where it's almost the perfect time for you to get done over here and be ready for round one in September. Um, Again, it's a repetition of all the information that you've seen: start date, end date, verbal, you'll do CR and then RC. You have the start dates for verbal, start date for quant, start date for DI, start date for test readiness here. And then you can now see details as to how you'd be doing this over here. Within this, again, you can expand this, you can expand this as well. Same information, you want to make sure you see it multiple times so that it registers in your brain. And then you can really now see precise dates here. You finish the master comprehension course, do the CR course, do cementing, do RC, and you're doing test readiness here. Then you do the quant journey. Same thing, you can really see the exact dates in this. So you can track this very, very closely. And in fact, you'll be able to track this on a day-by-day basis as we finalize and execute this plan. Now you can really see over here that every day you know exactly what to do. Now, this is a student who's already done all of this, so which is why if you see the legend, this is autocomplete. So as we do things, we start marking them complete overall. And I can honestly mark this complete by going here. Now, if it so happens that you can't study on a certain day, or you can put in more hours, you can adjust that as well. And you can really see that this would be upgraded to 5 hours very, very soon, and the entire tracker would be adjusted. You can also see that because she's already finished that, all of this is crossed out here. But in a fresh account, that won't happen. You can also mark no study days. Let's say on this Friday, I decide not to study. I'm going to save and close over here, and you're going to really see no study come up over here. Okay, so you can see the no study. So bottom line is you can track everything that you need to do over here. So hopefully that gave you an idea about how to think about your study plan, and let me just put in my short answer part here. So was this useful? Did that give you an idea about how to think about your study plan and your learning journey? If you're an eGMAT, are you guys tracking this? Have you made your own study plan? For those of you who are paid students, is this something that you're doing, actively tracking it? That's wonderful. Okay, I have Nishit who's saying I'm going to do this in 1 to 2 days. I just got started. Yeah, so again, make sure you go through the getting started course, and it'll tell you exactly what to do. So I'm going to move forward, and let's move forward here. Again, if you're not connected with me, please connect with me. I actually right now have close to 25,000 students who are connected with me here. Okay. The other piece that you're going to really see if you're an eGMAT is your daily tracking is going to come in. So you're going to really see a very sophisticated dashboard coming in saying, on Monday, you committed 2 hours. This is what you did, and this is the quality over here. On Tuesday, this is what you did. It's going to be very, very similar to your health trackers. If you guys use any health tracker, or if you guys use Apple's health app, you're going to see something which is very, very similar to that. Come in. I think we plan to launch it by Tuesday. We've been doing about a lot of internal testing or so, and you're going to see appropriate messages. So that's a completely AI-driven system that you're going to see. And for those of you who just noticed, we haven't announced it, but we just added 200 quant questions to Scholarinium. So if those of you who are studying Scholarinium, you probably have seen those questions on the platform. They were added at 3 p.m. yesterday. So now you have, I think, close to 20 sectional mocks, 20 quant mocks, in addition to the 5 full length mocks that you have. And if you go take condensed mocks, you have about 27 condensed mocks right now. And on the verbal side also, we plan to add about 300 to 350 questions in the next week. So you'll, for those of you who want more cementing quizzes, more sectional mocks in addition to the full length mocks, very soon you'll have close to 100 sectional mocks overall in addition to full length mocks, or you'd have about 10 hard cementing quizzes in every section, in every subsection. So in the next couple of weeks, you should have those. So again, the goal really is, if you want to improve, you want to get to the extremely high scores, you'd have all the tools that you need to get there. Okay. I do want to get feedback. I do want you guys to be in the coffee sessions with Pile, just because I think that's an excellent platform for you to give us feedback, or for us to solve your problems. They are again 8 to 9 a.m. on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. Again, and Pile hosts them. So there's no one else who hosts them. It's Pile, or it'll be either Pile or myself would be there. Okay. So first things first, I want to just ask one question, and this is a when you make mistakes today, this is a multiple response question. When you make mistakes today, why is it that you make mistakes today? So I want you to choose 2 reasons at the most here, not more than 2, even though you could choose every reason. If you start choosing every reason, we don't get a prioritized list. But if you choose just 1 or 2 at the most, you could just choose 1, 2, then we really start to see why and where people falter. Let's get data. I have about 14 responses from 14 people. I have close to 40 responses so far. So people are choosing multiple, but let's get a few more. All right, I've gotten 22 odd folks who've put in their answers. I'm going to end the poll. I'm going to broadcast results. And what you really see is very interesting. Okay. If you notice the pattern of these over here, not enough time, passage too complex, limited familiarity, not enough retention. Uh, uh, you know, uh, so 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 Not enough retention, did not read the passage properly, and did not visualize the answer. So these are what I call as more causal reasons. So, I made a mistake because I couldn't retain the information. I made a mistake because I did not do an action. And when you don't do an action, it's easier to solve it because you know the cause. When you say choices are too close, you are really telling me a symptom versus a cause. Because when you say choices are too close, I can tell you choices are never too close. The wrong answer is always 100% wrong. The correct answer is always 100% correct. In other words, in GMAT RC or even in CR, if the correct answer were not there, one of the incorrect ones would not be the correct answer. They'll have to replace it with another correct answer because the wrong answer is 100% wrong. Yes. Passage too complex is never the case. Passage may seem unfamiliar, but the context may be unfamiliar. That would happen with the passages on GMAT RC. Even when they have extremely complex language, they don't test your understanding of complex language. And in fact, this is one difference between the GMAT and the GRE. The GMAT never tests your understanding of sophisticated vocabulary. The GRE does, the CAT does. And I'm going to again prove it to you as well. Okay, but keep this list in mind. Remember what you answered, and then we're going to do this question, ask this question again towards the end, and I'm sure your answers would be very, very different based on the learnings. And yes, not only we will have the recording available as well. Okay, So I want to then understand, how do you approach RC today? Let me put another poll here. So here is the poll question. What's your current approach to GMAT RC? I'm going to reopen the poll, remove broadcast results. All right, I have 6 responses, 7 responses, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Come on, let's get at least 18 or 19. I have about 35 students here in the webinar. 13. And you can really see the details of each one of the choices here on the slide. 15 responses. Can I get a couple more? And I know those of you who are on a cell phone, it's a pain to really respond to poll questions on a cell phone. So I'm going to end the poll, broadcast results. And you can really see, it's either number 3, which is the approach that we recommend, where you spend time on the passage, understand the passage, and then go to the questions, or number 1, where you skim through. Okay, that's really, really good. Okay. Now, this is a self-evaluation, and this is something which for me is really critical, because I want to know how you evaluate yourself today. So the question says, what level of understanding do you have of the passage? This is for people who kind of spend time on the passage, who chose choice 3 before you start going to answer choices. Nine responses, 10, 3, 2, and 1. I'm going to end the poll. I'm going to broadcast the results. So you can really see we got about 13 responses, and then biggest group, about half of you think you're at 70 to 90%, which you should do really well in this webinar. And then you see the other half thinks they're in the 50 to 75 and less than 50. So my goal here today would be to make sure that you can go one group higher. So those who are in that 75 to 90 should go into that 90 to 100 right after this webinar. So I want to make sure that I change those habits enough that post these 2 hours, you get there. Similarly, less than 50, we'll go into 50 to 75. What it means is that you'd still make mistakes, but you're going to make fewer mistakes, those who are in that less than 50. But again, if you continue reinforcing that approach, you continue applying it more and more, you're going to move to that 75 to 90, you're going to move that to the 90 to 100. And then as you get there, you're going to pretty much get every answer correct. Okay. So 3 steps that we're going to really do. One is, the most critical step over here is how to extract the most from the passage. How do you read like a manager and not like an engineer? How do you take the passage type out of the equation is what we're going to really do. That's step number 1. The second is, so once you've extracted the most from the passage, that's about 70 to 80% of the challenge when it comes to GMAT RC. Why 70 to 80%? Because in GMAT RC, you don't have to look outside the passage. Okay. Then the second piece is being methodical. So how do you use that information to get to the question, to get to the answer correctly every time? What good habits do you inculcate? And then essentially we're going to demonstrate those. I mean, that's the piece over here. Demonstrating this is really important. One thing, and only one thing, that I want to ask from you is that you kind of stop hating GMAT RC, because I think it's an incredible a subsection within the GMAT. Within 400 words, you get to know a complete thought about an area that you had no idea about. I think it's one of the most efficient ways of learning something new, not just answering a question on the test. That's in my opinion, that's not the key learning. That's the bonus. You get to do well on the GMAT, but the skill that you develop with regards to GMAT RC, and I want to reinforce GMAT RC, not GRE RC, not CAT RC, but GMAT RC is something that you're going to use post your MBA, because many a time you're going to face, you're going to read reports from people who work for you, where you may not be a subject matter expert, but you'd still have to make good decisions. And the skill of GMAT RC is going to enable you to understand what's written, and the skill in GMAT CR, as well as what you learn in TP and MSR. That's going to help you ask the right questions so that you can arrive at the right decision. So really, really critical set of skills. What do you learn through acing the GMAT? Okay, so how do we get most from the passage? It's purely about making sure we do justice when we are reading at the sentence level. We make sure that our brain's not overwhelmed. So what we really do is, as we're going from one sentence to the other, we try and predict what the author is going to say next. When you do that, you not only comprehend faster, you also prevent your brain from getting overwhelmed. Now, how do you predict thoughts? You look at keywords, and keywords are something that we're going to focus a tremendous amount on. And then, as I said, each one of you has a certain amount of brain capacity today. Those of you who are voracious readers, you can keep a lot more information in your brain uh, before your brain gets overwhelmed. Those of you who don't read a lot, you probably don't have that brain capacity today. So we're going to make sure that we summarize in an adaptive fashion information before we move forward, because what I don't want is your brain to get overwhelmed. That's the worst thing that can happen to you. So there is no right or wrong way to take notes. The only wrong way is you cannot let your brain get overwhelmed. Now it turns out, if you start taking notes, if you prevent from your brain from getting overwhelmed, if you just push it just enough that you really say, okay, I'm now stretching it, but now it's starting to get overwhelmed. I'm going to take some notes here and then come back to it in about 10 seconds. If you do that, you also end up increasing your brain capacity in that way. So taking notes serves a dual purpose. You don't lose track while reading that passage. Also, you increase your brain capacity so that when you read that next passage, you can read slightly more content. And as you continue doing that, you're going to find that your brain capacity improves tremendously. Okay. Um, has anyone does anyone know, you have these competitions where you're asked to repeat a set of random numbers. So it's retention strategy. Does anyone know, what's the range of how many numbers can people recite in sequence before they falter? People who compete in this. So essentially, you have these competitions where someone's going to give you a set of random numbers, and they're going to keep on giving these random numbers, and after a certain point, you've got to to uh, to repeat that. Okay. So for example, I may say 257892567 through blah 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 blah, and then I say, I've given you 15 numbers. Tell me the sequence in 15 numbers faithfully. So do you know how many numbers can a human brain retain with the right kind of learning? What's the what's the range of record right now? If you don't know this, it's close to about 500-600. So the champions over here can recite up to 500-600 random numbers in a sequence when they're given to them. And but then these are the very people who start with 5 or 6 numbers to begin with. Again, through strategies, you improve your retention, is what I'm trying to really say, but only when you apply these strategies consistently. Okay. So one thing that we're not going to do is we're not going to focus on pace. Why? Because in my opinion, and no one's delivered half as much success as eGMAT has, is that speed kills on the GMAT. Speed's not a skill that you build. Speed is something that comes innate to you as you improve your brain capacity. Okay. So we are not going to worry about speed because that's going to happen automatically. Okay. With that, I want to give you this first passage. Want you to read the passage. You'll have a minute over here. It's a very, very small passage. It's one line, literally. I want you to summarize what is the author doing here. Here is the passage. Read it. Type out what the author is doing here. The passage is on the slide here. Starts with bordering on the extreme one definition. All right. You can really say you can really see how people are looking at this. Excuse me, slightly differently. So your main points are explained here. So I have a poll question for you, and let me just give you passage one at the bottom here. So passage one is right smack at the bottom. You can really see that. I'm going to give you a poll question, and can you guys select still solving so that I don't time you when you choose an option other than still solving? Then I'm going to actually call time. So can I get about 10 people to select still solving before I show the question? I have one person who selected still solving. Can you get 10 people to select still solving here? I haven't seen the question. I haven't shown the question to you. Once I get 10 people who've selected still solving, then I'm going to show the question. 7 people. I think that's plenty. I'm going to forward. Here is the question. That's the main point question. Select the correct answer. All right, pretty much everyone's done. And Sarita, you can put your question in the Q&A pod. I see you've raised your hand. I'm going to resume this. I'm going to end the poll and broadcast results. You guys can see how you guys did over here. Your choices B, C, and D that are very popular. One person still solving, but we got about 20 responses. That's great. All right, so what's going on over here? Clear on answers. Okay, so the author starts with this bordering on the extreme one definition. When you see this over here, bordering on the extreme one definition, what's the inference that you can draw? What is the inference that you can draw? If you just read this, don't go beyond this. Bordering on the extreme one definition. What can you draw as an inference? There are other definitions. Okay, that's good. The second thing is that this definition that the author is presenting is probably not the most precise. So here is what you can draw. One, okay. How many of you inferred all three when you were reading? Let me put in a yes no poll here. How many of you inferred all three? This is what GMAT RC tests, your ability to make this kind of an inference, not at what is ethnocentrism and all of those things, or xenophobia, or whatever it is. It's these words. Okay. So let's kind of continue reading. Bordering on the extreme, one definition of ethnocentrism considers it a schismatic in-group out-group differentiation. How many of you, essentially, when you saw the word schismatic and said, man, this is hard, I don't know what schismatic means. Will I be able to answer the question correctly? How many of you were concerned? Okay. Remember this, on the GMAT, first of all, you're not going to see such words very frequently. Okay. The reason why it's there is because I wanted to prove a point. The second thing is, even when you see that, most likely they won't matter because the words around them will give you enough context to infer their meaning. Okay, so that's really, really important. So consider it as schismatic in-group outgroup. So let's call it some kind of a differentiation. You could call it systematic, doesn't matter. Okay, as someone says, do not know, but it was not a big deal. Absolutely correct. It would never be a big deal on the GMAT. And that's why it's one of the best exams. In fact, if you so we work with the GMAT very, very closely. They actually share a lot of information about how the test is designed with top prep companies. So they do test prep summits where we get invited, Manhattan gets invited, and they kind of talk about how they validate questions, how they ensure that the questions are not vocab dependent. It's not about being vocab heavy, it's about they're not vocab dependent, and how when they design a question, it doesn't have a bias towards any particular region. So that or any particular profession. So there's a lot of uh, cleansing done to ensure that questions are free of bias. Okay. So one definition of ethnocentrism considers a schismatic in-group out-group differentiation in which internal cohesion, relative peace, solidarity, and devotion to the in-group are core. I'm going to just focus on these two lines. So this part over here. How many of you tried to really get into just every word of this and said, let's kind of figure out what is internal cohesion, what is relative peace, what is solidarity? How many of you tried to understand the meaning of each of these words? Okay, kind of read it twice. Remember this, you're not expected to know what ethnocentrism is. Okay, it's not a commonly known term. You're not expected to be a subject matter expert in any area, whether it comes to sciences, economics, social sciences, sciences with regards to earth. You're not expected to be. So when you see technical terms, unless they're defined explicitly in a layman's term, you're not expected to know. So you should, when you look at this list and lists in general, and if you see technical words in there, try and summarize those. So when you say in which internal cohesion, relative peace, solidarity, loyalty, and devotion to the in-group, can you give me a 2 or 3 word summary of what all of this meant? What else can you summarize all of this in 2 or 3 words? Togetherness seems positive. Togetherness is good. I kind of like togetherness more than seems positive, but I think there can be something better. Could you call it likeness for the same people, love for in group? Could you do that? Okay. So Bonhomie, I don't know what that is, so I'm not going to comment on it. Um, but yeah, but I think you guys get the point. Are correlated with a state of hostility toward outgroups. Okay. So how can you summarize this with a state of hostility towards outgroups? It's hatred, right? Hatred for outsiders, right? Which are perceived as subhuman and or incorporation of evil, right? Don't call it xenophobia. Again, you can call it xenophobia, but xenophobia is a slightly different. We are not supposed to know this. So don't try and bring technical terms as possible. The key thing over here is you're supposed to know what correlation means. It means they're related to, they're linked to. When you say two things are correlated, there's a linkage between them. Okay. So what's going on over here? Uh, 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 so the author presents an exaggerated definition, and then the author says, hey, as per this definition, there's some sort of differentiation in, as per which love for your own people and hatred for outside people are linked together. Okay, that's where correlation is. All right. So with that, let me show the poll here. Here is the poll. This is how you guys polled here. We had a split here. Choice C was really popular, but B and D also had a ton of votes. So let's kind of see how you guys did. No one chose choice A, so choice A is clearly wrong. So I'm not going to focus on it. Choice B says to evaluate the concept of ethnocentrism while listing its various features. So a lot of people who kind of chose this kind of said, hey, I see something called features. I see a bunch of things listed there. Maybe it's features. Let me do that. So first of all, it's wrong for two counts. One, to evaluate something means to get the pros and cons of something. The author never says, here is why EC is good, here is why EC is bad. Does the author say that? Here is why EC is good, here is why EC is bad. No, right? The author never says that. The author never expresses his opinion on what he considers EC to be. Everyone's clear on this, right? And again, remember, evaluation is a very clear, very simple word. Um, every time you give an exam, you're evaluated. Every time you go through an annual review, you're evaluated. What are your positives? What are your negatives or improvement areas? That's evaluation. So evaluation of anything means looking at the positives or negatives, pros and cons. So this was clearly not an evaluation. Now, giving a definition of something and listing its features are two very different things. Here, the author was presenting a definition. Let me give you an example. A cell phone is a device that makes you productive on the go. Okay, that's a cell phone. Or provides entertainment on the go. That's a cell phone. Okay. What are the features of a cell phone? A cell phone has a large screen, a fast processor, a fast internet connection, an app store. It has apps that can connect to information on your at your work. So those are features of a cell phone. So features of something and the definition of the same thing, they're kind of different entities. They're related but not the same. Okay. Choice C was the most popular to define the concept of EC. Does the author define the concept of EC? Does the author say this is my definition or this is how the EC is defined? Does the author say that? No, the author says bordering on the extreme one definition, right? Do you understand the difference between defining something and presenting information? Is there anyone who doesn't understand the difference between defining something and presenting information? Because this is a really important distinction. So do you want me to elaborate? Let me just say this clear, all answers. Do you want me to elaborate the difference between defining something and presenting information? Yes, no? Okay. Defining something means you're putting your weight behind it. Let me just give you a very, very simple example. Let's go back here. So, which controls can I do? I think I'm going to put a new note. All right. Like Bloomberg is a more. So what are you doing over here? You're really just passing on information, right? It says you should purchase. You're actually giving a recommendation here. Okay. Now, according to Bloomberg, Google is a great buy. What are you doing over here? What's the difference between these two statements? In the first one, I'm giving a recommendation. In the second one, I'm merely passing on information. If it so happens that Google stands so okay. In case of one, if it turns out it's a great stock, you get the praise. If it turns out it's not a great stock, you get the blame. In case of two, you don't get the praise, you don't get the blame because you didn't do the analysis. You're not backing that claim that Bloomberg made. You see the difference here? Yes. And 9 out of 10 times, what you're going to find is that people who try and spread false news will use option number two, the italicized option. And it will seem like that they're backing it, but legally they're not backing it. This is a really big thing that the GMAT tests. Why is that important? Because 9 out of 10 times when your people who report to you come and give you a recommendation, they're going to do it like number two. So if you take that recommendation and try putting the blame on them if that recommendation doesn't work, they'll always have a way out. Then it's you who actually are the one who's making the decision. On the other hand, if they say one, then they are the ones who actually share the blame. They don't owe it. You're still making the decision post your MBA if you're investing in something, but they also share the blame. Can you see why understanding this distinction is extremely useful? They can be blamed or they get the benefit. It cuts both ways. Okay, the upside is also theirs. It's not just the downside. Okay, I just want to make sure that you understand that. The second one, he's just present. Yeah, he's giving you a fact. You are the one who makes the decision. Okay. So let's look at number 3 here. To define the concept of ethnocentrism, which leads to a hierarchy. So first of all, the author is not defining the concept of ethnocentrism. And the second thing is there's no cause and effect. The author is not saying EC causes something, that hierarchy among social groups. The author is merely presenting information by saying, bordering on one extreme, one definition of ethnocentrism considers it a schismatic in-group out-group differentiation. He's not saying EC causes this differentiation. Okay, so this is wrong, which means choice C is wrong, which brings us to choice T, which says to introduce the concept of EC. Okay, prior to reading this passage, you had no idea what EC was, or most of you didn't. Now you do. So you've been introduced to the concept of EC. How is he doing it? By presenting a view on that introduction. Since this is not the most precise introduction, it's bordering on an extreme. It's an exaggerated introduction. Okay, which checks all boxes, and that's what the author is trying to do, to give you an introduction to the concept of ECM, which is the correct answer. Okay, so why did you make a mistake? Those of you, but 70% of you got this wrong. Why did you make a mistake? Did not immerse yourself. Was this hard? Some of you did not immerse yourself. Some of you probably didn't know what evaluate meant. Others did not know what uh, cause and effect meant over there. So others were trying to make the meaning of EC that's there. But again, was this hard? Or can you also really see how just in that one question you could really see the kind of skills that the GMAT's testing, which are very, very practical skills. Okay. Now, on the same subject, there's a lot to learn from one single passage. On the same subject, I can change the passage completely to ensure that one of the other answer choices is correct. Here's an example. Ethnocentrism, a concept often viewed through a negative lens. Why don't you read this and tell me what are we doing here? Is the author presenting information? Is the author criticizing EC? Is the author evaluating EC? What is the author doing here? Same EC piece. Presenting two sides to a concept. What does presenting two sides to a concept mean? What does that mean? It's evaluation, right? See, from the same passage, we've enforced evaluation twice. Once when it's wrong, the other one when it's right. So now you can really see when you see an evaluation, you're going to be that much more confident in figuring out the right thing. Right? Does this help? Does this help to really see? Now are you more confident on what? Again, same subject matter, we're evaluating. You guys know this. What are we doing over here? What are we doing here? We are defining EC, right? We are defining. You can really see that ethnocentrism can be defined. Sorry, shouldn't we cross here? Maybe Control C. Change my annotation. Right? Same idea, but now it's structured differently. Defining is correct because I'm telling you what the definition is. I'm not presenting someone else's definition. Everyone's good there? Can you see this? Yes, a definition can also be a fact. See, everything in the world can be divided into two groups. It can either be a fact or an opinion. But within these groups, there can be many subgroups. And anything that the author tells you in the RC passage is a fact. If the author is backing, you're going to consider it as 100% true. If the author says the sun goes around the earth, you're not going to question the author. Because the author is the subject matter expert. You are not the subject matter expert. Let's look at this version of it. What are we doing here? Yes, negative criticism. You can really see it in multiple places. The harmful nature, this misguided worldview, unjustifiable hierarchy, the fact that it's unjustifiable, the fact that it's misguided, even more alarmingly, such divisive and prejudice linking has no place in our modern society. Okay. Are any of these words hard, harmful, misguided, unjustifiable, alarmingly? Are any of these words hard? No. You should know these, right? We're not talking about hard vocabulary here. We're talking about building your ability to contextualize information. I could have just used this language in a completely different context, which is related to sciences, and the main idea, the structure of it would still be the same. The subject would change, right? I can do that, correct? So, does passage type matter when it comes to such questions? If you're able to get these things out? It doesn't. Yes. Tell me, what is that one thing that you want to understand? So while you type that out, I'm going to move forward here. But again, you'll have the PDF, you'll go through all of these passages just to reinforce how you're reading. And can you really see how, if you do this a few more times during this webinar, you're going to reach that one level up? Can you see that? This is the level of understanding that I want you to get to, where you can really see, you can really be in the author's shoes and say, what is it that he's trying to communicate? Okay, I'm still waiting for that. I just want to understand one thing. What is that one thing? What do you mean by pre-thinking? Okay, pre-thinking means before you look at answer choices, if the question gives you context, you are able to really say this is what is likely going to be in the answer. Okay, that's what it is. And it does a tremendous amount of good to you. It's a litmus test that tells me that you've truly understood the passage. It also uh, helps you cut through the bullshit in answer choices, because the answer choices have a lot of crap in them to trap you. If you know what information would be there in the answer choices, your evaluation of those answer choices becomes tremendously efficient. In RC, we know how its definition, opinion, or fact, what the author is speaking about. Are you really asking, how do we figure out if it's a definition or an opinion or a fact? Is that what you're asking? If that's what you're asking, you're going to see this through a few examples. So hold on to this. Okay. So good question, great question. Ask me in another 45 minutes. All right. Second passage, summarize this passage in your own words. Completely independent. Disregard the last passage. This is a fresh passage for you. All right, let's get a few more insights here. Perfect. We have this. Now I'm going to now give you a poll question. There's another poll question. Again, you guys know the drill now. Still solving. Let's get that while I get the passage at the bottom. Okay, let me do this. And here is the poll question. Select the correct choice. All right, 80% of the class is done. Get those answers in. 3, 2, and 1. That's one person who's not done. Everyone's done. That's wonderful. Okay, let me hide the pod. Let me resume. This is how you guys polled. Choice B is extremely popular. Choice D is somewhat popular. Choice E is also popular over here. All right, so this is a wonderful question, and it'll help you understand how do you figure out what you when the author is expressing his opinion or when the author is presenting information. Okay, another question. Look at this statement over here. The color blue is considered to have a soothing effect on moods of people. What can you infer based on this statement? What can you infer? 3, 2, and 1. Let me end the poll. Broadcast results. So what you can really see is 53% of you got this right. You can infer that some people consider the color blue as soothing. You cannot infer that the color blue is indeed soothing. Why? Because the author is presenting information. He's saying it's considered to have, which means, hey, I'm telling you some people believe in it. I'm not telling you what I believe in. The author doesn't believe in this because the author is not saying the color blue has a soothing effect on moods of people. So you can't do B or C. Because you can't do B, of course, you can't do C. Okay. Does that help? Okay. This is the difference between presenting information versus expressing an opinion. The author is not expressing an opinion. The author is merely presenting information. And I think the audio is good because I can really see the audio is going out properly. From here, you can definitely infer that the color blue is soothing. Okay. So let's look at this. Ethnocentrism and its canonical variants are deemed to be. What does deemed to be mean? Deemed to be means that they're considered to be. Right? Intimately connected with, believed to be is also good. Okay. Intimately connected with xenophobia. Okay. So what we're really saying is some people consider XP and EC. There are no brownie points for saying out ethnocentrism and xenophobia. Okay. You can call them XP and EC. What is XP? A complex attitude cum sentiment structure involving aversion, dislike, and antagonism vis-a-vis the stranger, the alien. Okay, so this is where the author is defining what XP is and everything that the stranger or alien represents. So I'm going to actually remove this part over here. So if you were to summarize the information between dashes, how would you summarize it in 2 to 3 words? If you were to summarize information between dashes, how would you do that between 2 to 3 words? In 2 to 3 words. All this way from a complex attitude, blah, 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 blah. What's a simple summary of this? It's hatred for the aliens, dislike for the alien. Don't say this defining xenophobia because then you're not giving it a summary. If you don't give it a summary, it's always going to pressurize your brain. Don't want that. Okay. So this is this is hatred towards, dislike towards different groups. That's good. Hatred towards different groups. That's all of that is good. Okay. And again, I'd recommend that you don't call it xenophobia, call it XP, call it X, doesn't matter what, but it's painful to call it this thing. Xeno is good, ET is good. Okay. Here we are not comparing Xeno and ET. Are we comparing Xeno and ET over here? Are we doing that over here? No, we're not doing that. Really important to be precise while doing this. Then let's move forward. Some sociocultural anthropologists even considered XP and EC opposite sides of the same coin. Why does the author use the word even here? Even is a really important keyword. What job does even play? It shows extreme. It's not also. Person who says extreme, it's not another point. You've got to understand what is something. It's not something that the author agrees with. Not sure. How do you say that? How do you say that the author disagrees with this? What information in the passage tells you that the author disagrees with this? Okay. Even is an emphasis keyword, really important. I'm going to give you some examples, and which is where this is what RC tests, not all those complex vocabularies. When you really look at this, Michael Jordan was the most dominant basketball player of his time. Some analysts even consider him to be the most dominant player of all time. This is where even's emphasizing how dominant he was, right? Look at another one. GDP is increasingly a poor measure of prosperity. It's not even a reliable gauge of production. It's kind of showing how bad GDP is. It's the emphasis word here. Now, why is even used here? What is it trying to emphasize? It's trying to take this intimately connected to an extreme. Can you guys see this? How this and this are linked? What they're really saying is, yes, there are lots of people who consider these two to be intimately connected. There is a small group that takes that intimate connection to an extreme where they really say XP and EC practically coexist. When you say opposite sides of the same coin, it's practically coexisting, practically the same thing. So they take that connection to the next extreme. But a few voices have cautioned that this need not be the same. What they're really saying is, hey, they're not so close that you could call them practically the same thing. Do you see the value of even here? Why even is used? Okay, there is no comparison here. It's about how closely linked they are. It's not saying EC takes this to, when you're comparing two things, you say, hey, EC takes it to level A, XP takes it to level B. That's when you're kind of doing a comparison. Okay, so good point, good question, and I can really see you guys are thinking, starting to think in the right direction. No, opposite sides of the same coin means completely different. No, if two people are opposite sides of the same coin, what do they mean? They're same but viewed differently. Okay, I see some hatred for banks here. Let's not go there. Banks are big employers when it comes to MBAs. So you're saying practically the same thing. Okay. As long as you take it to be practically the same thing, that's something which is right. When you say opposite sides of the same coin means, otherwise you won't use the word same coin. Remember, yeah, it's technically the same coin. Yes. All right. So same work we do in different banks. All right, that's good. As long as you're telling that, that's good. So is this clear as to what we're doing here? Is this clear? Can you really see how our analysis is very different than the typical analysis that you really do? We don't focus on complex things, complex words, I would say, but we focus on sophisticated logic that the author is trying to express. Can you see that? How we are kind of trying to get uh, into the shoes of the author without being technical. Okay, and that's what you need to get to. Okay, so what the author is saying, EC and its variants are considered to be closely connected to XP. Okay, let's just do a revision here, where XP is hatred for the aliens. Some experts take that closeness to an extreme where they say they practically coexist, but then there's another group that say that might not be the case. So the author defines a new term XP and then he presents a bunch of information. Okay, so with regards to how you guys polled on this one, let me just show that. Select poll P1Q2. This is how you guys polled. You know, B and E were two popular choices, and then you had other choices in between. Now, remember this, a current inference is always from the point of view of the author. If the author does not express an opinion on something, and if it's not stated as a fact, then you can't infer that. Really, really important. A correct inference is always what the author considers to be 100% true. Um, Another way of saying it is if you had $100 and you say, I bet the author considers this to be 100% true, then that would be an inference. Okay. So with that, let's look at answer choices. XP and EC are different facets of the same concept. This is not the author's view. This is the view of some experts. So this is not true. People who chose choice A, is that clear? The canonical variants of EC are closely connected with xenophobia. Again, this is not the author's view. It's the deemed view. Okay. We don't know if the author believes in this or not. This was the most popular choice. 8 of you chose this. Are you clear as to why this is wrong? Are you clear? Good. I see a bunch of people saying yes. Choice C, again, not connected. Of course, we can't really say. A lot of people believe that they're connected, so there's no reason for us to believe that they're not connected. XP causing EC, again, there's no cause and effect relationship that's stated in the passage, so we can't say that is correct. With that, the inference says XP entails dislike towards the strange. Why? Because the only thing that the author has expressed his opinion on is between these two dashes. Okay, 25% of you got this right. What's your takeaway? What did you learn? What did you learn from this? Confused in how to read passages. Okay. Should you also, so someone calls me, sir, call me Rajat. Um, should you make notes? If yes, if your brain's getting overwhelmed, I always recommend you make notes, at least when you are in the learning phase. And you're going to find your brain's automatically going to tell you you don't need to make as elaborate notes. Good. You have to be precise. But again, when you think about the precision that we're talking about over here, uh, do you really have to worry about complex words here? Do you have to worry about complex words? No, you don't. It's about simple things that we care about. It's about the context. All right, visualizing is really, really important. Okay, so again, don't need to worry about vocabulary. So now, whatever we've learned, we're going to apply it on a long, proper GMAT RC passage. It's a medium hard passage. It's not the hardest of passages, but it's a medium hard passage. And I don't want to give you the hardest of passages because I think that you apply it on a medium hard, it gives you confidence. If you are able to solve such passages with accuracy, if you're able to retain that, getting to that V82, V83 should not be a problem. But then if you're able to do this with 4 or 5 passages, then you can actually move up a notch. And honestly, you'd be able to do this again and again with even harder passages. Oh, these answer choices were, I mean, when you say the answer choices were straightforward, there's 25% accuracy here. They're clearly not straightforward. Remember this, what you consider easy may not be easy at all. Okay. I can tell you in the GMAT test prep industry, no one's made more questions than Payal or I. Okay, we make all of our questions ourselves. We do not outsource question creation. And when we make questions and we kind of predict the difficulty level of it, we are wrong 40% of the time, which is why every question that we float out has to be characterized through at least 4 to 500 attempts. Only then their difficulty level is finalized. Okay. So what you consider as easy may not be easy. What you consider as hard may not be hard. I can tell you that. Always stuck between two answer choices. I mean, here you were you stuck between two answer choices? If so, then you're not reading them right. If you're saying that statement still, then you're still thinking about GMAT RC as a means to get a good score on the GMAT. You're not approaching this with a point of view of learning or building your ability there. Okay. Uh, and honestly, if you try and take this as a test and only learn that aspect, you may be able to get to a 70th percentile at the most. You will not get to a 95th, 99th percentile. But if you truly want to get to a 95th, 99th percentile in any subsection, forget about verbal or quant or the CR or RC, in any subsection, then focus on learning and not worry about the scores, because that's the only way you're going to get to 99th percentile. Okay. And again, lots and lots of students have done this. As an example to improve of a student who went from 19 to 93rd percentile in RC. Another guy who went from 14 to 91st percentile. Um, okay. And this is all something that's tracked on the platform. This is a screenshot from our platform where you can really see how his accuracy and timing, both of them moved in the right direction. Accuracy went up, timing went down. Okay. Guy who got a 755. Again, talks about immersion and try taking notes. And then someone who's gotten 100 percentile. So you have variations of this as well. And then again, for since the year 2021, we've accounted for about 65% of all success reported on GMAT Club. It's because we focus on ensuring that you build skills, not worry about tricks, is what I would say. Okay, so we're going to do a full length passage. I'm going to give you a full length passage, and I'm going to put in a yes no question. So I want you to read that passage first, and then once you're done reading the passage, you're going to solve 5 questions, one after the other. Okay, here is the passage, and when you're done reading the passage, I'm going to put in a yes no poll. Select yes or no. So here's the yes no poll. If you've not selected no, please select no. And when you're done, change the answer to yes. And 80% of you are done. Have changed your answers from no to yes. Then I'm going to start with the questions. All right, get those answers in. I think most of you should be done by now. And see about 60% of you are done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce the size. You'll still have access to this. And I'm going to put in, I'm going to hide this part here. I'm going to put in the poll questions. So can you guys do still solving before I show the first question? Can you guys do still solving? Perfect, thank you. I'm going to hide this as well. I'm going to move this out. All right, we remove broadcast results. And here is the first question. Good luck, guys. All right, about 70% of you are done. 80% of you are done. 94% of you. Just one person's left. 3. Good, everyone's done. And the poll, broadcast the results. This is how you guys did. I'm going to hide this part. Here is the part for question 2. Select still solving before I show the question. Okay, let me remove broadcast results. Here is question number 2. Read the question really carefully. right, pretty much everyone's done. That's good. Let me end the poll and broadcast the results, and you can really see how you guys are doing. I'm going to put in now get question number 3 here. I want people to select still solving. Okay, here is the question. All right, everyone's done. Get those answers in. 3, 2. Actually, everyone's done. I'm going to end the poll, broadcast the results. You can really see how you guys have done. Let's go into select poll. Question 4. Here's question number 4. Select still solving. Okay, here is the question. But 80% of you are done. Get those answers in. All right, just 2 more folks are left. 3, 2, and 1. End the poll, broadcast results. You can see how you guys have done. me select the poll and get you the last question. Go to still solving. All right. Here is the poll question. All right, pretty much everyone's done. Get those answers in. Good. Now end the poll, broadcast the results. All right. Uh, we hide the pod and bring in my video pod back. How was the passage? How did it feel? Let me bring in the notes here. How did the passage feel? How did the passage feel? Easy with the options felt trickier and hard. Okay, not too difficult. Good, medium, good, really, really good. Let's kind of solve this over here. FNM assert, again, remember, this is not the author, this is FNM saying that medical research could be improved by a move towards larger, simpler clinical trials of medical treatments. So when you look at the first statement with the author, what you should really say is, hey, the author is presenting information, an assertion of FNM. So he's not really making a claim himself, he's presenting an assertion or a claim that FNM is making. And what's the claim? It says, hey, we can improve medical research, okay, if we move towards larger and simpler trials for medical treatments. Another keyword, really critical keyword over here, currently. Researchers collect far more background information, and I'm going to also highlight far more because anytime you see comparisons in GMAT RC, you should kind of be careful because you have inference questions and detailed questions that come around comparisons. So Far more is a comparative word. So researchers collect far more background information in patients than is strictly required. Than is also technically comparison. How much more? Substantially more than hospitals collect. And the result of that, thereby, is an outcome keyword, escalating costs of data collection, storage, and analysis. So essentially, what the author is really saying is presenting the first recommendation is saying, hey, let's move toward larger, simpler trial. Currently, he's presenting a practice that says the researchers are collecting a ton of information. Okay. And that information leads to higher costs. And he's also comparing that to hospitals to really tell you how much more information that researchers are collecting. Then the author says, although limiting information collection could increase the risk, although is a keyword which is a contrast keyword. And when you look at this, till here, what you really say, what you know is that the author is trying to defend against a potential weak now. Although limiting information collection could increase the risk. So the author is really saying, oh, if I'm recommending information collection, but some people may think that it's going to increase the risk. So I'm going to let me just put a defense against weakener. It's a really common strategy that we rarely see when someone's proposing a change. FNM contend, so not the author, but FNM contend that such risk, never entirely eliminable from research, would still be small. Why does the author use the word still? Why would the author not just say would be small? Why can't I just cross the word and really say would be small? What change would that make? What's the value of the simple word still? Okay, the risk will always be there. What does that mean? Can you elaborate? There is no change in the risk. Absolutely. Okay, that no change part is really critical. What the author is really saying, let me share something with you. So, here is a sentence. FNM contend that such risk, never entirely eliminable, would still be small. So essentially what they're really saying is it was small earlier, it's small now. If you remove the word still over here, and if you just say would be small, okay, as underlined in the second sentence. So what this means is the risk is small now after the proposal. We don't really know what it was earlier. So still is a really critical word if you want to say that there is no change. Is that clear? Okay, only in research, another critical keyword here, which means only is a segmentation keyword. When you see only, it means that whatever we are saying is only applicable to this, but it's not applicable to anything else. So when you see only, again, always, it could lead to inferences. So be very, very careful. Make a mental pointer that hey, there could be a segmentation impact here. Only is really critical in CR, in RC also. Only, just, those are very important segmentation keywords. Okay, so as per FNM, medical MR, I wouldn't even write medical research. I'd say MR can be improved. Improved is top arrow with towards larger, simpler trials. So larger, I would say plus plus. So larger is for me, that's plus plus. And simpler, I'd say SIMP. I don't have an annotation for simpler. Okay, currently too much data collected. So I'd say plus plus data is what my notes would be. And then I'd say D greater than HOS is what I would say in my notes, data greater than hospital, which leads to incremental costs. Okay, there's a negative of collecting rest data, but again, that risk will not change. Okay, so essentially, if you were to summarize what we are saying, we're talking about benefits of a simpler trial. Okay, now we have not only and but also, here you can really see FNM proposed not only that research to do A, which is limit data collection, which is what we've already talked about, but also that researchers enroll more patients. So the second proposal. Whenever you see not only, you'll also have but also, which means that you'll have two things in there. So you can already predict there's going to be a second proposal. Okay. And then as you enroll more patients, we say there's an outcome of this, thereby obtaining a more representative. More representative means it's more than what was done previously. Again, you can infer this. You don't need to read that over here. the total population under study. Often researchers restrict study participation. Often is another keyword that's used for the current way of doing things, or frequently. So again, if you know this, their visualization comes very handy when you're reading information. It becomes more or less automatic and improves comprehension. It also automatically enhances time. Researchers restrict study participation to patients with no ailments besides those being studied. So essentially, often means the current practices I'm going to only choose is ideal group of patients. A treatment judged successful under these ideal conditions can then be evaluated. So again, then is a keyword which talks about a two-step, multi-step process. And so currently we have a two-step process here. So far, so good. You guys are with me? Are you guys with me? Okay. So we're talking about a second proposal, increase the size of trial. Currently, we only enroll ideal patients, and we have to do a two-step process. Now, let's kind of really talk about what are the benefits of a larger trial. Broadening the range of trial participants, FNM suggests, would enable researchers to evaluate. Evaluating something means pros and cons, figuring out the pros and cons of something. Evaluate a treatment's efficacy for diverse patients under different subgroups. Um, Diverse patients under various conditions and to evaluate its effectiveness for different subgroups. So this is when you go from here to here, very technical. I know some of you can do this. I know I can do this, but in the context of GMAT RC, unless it's explained explicitly, what does evaluating a treatment's efficacy for diverse patients under various conditions means, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to contextualize this to really say these are the benefits of enrolling a larger variety of patients in the trial. I'm not going to really visualize a whole lot. Why? Because I'm not supposed to know this. A teacher takes the GMAT. Someone who's an art student takes the GMAT. Someone who's a military professional takes this GMAT. Someone who's a medical professional takes the GMAT. And the GMAT is supposed to be agnostic to your background. So I'm not going to go into drill down to really figure out what does this mean. All I'm going to really say is I'm going to get insights which I wasn't able to get from other things and for different groups of people. But what those insights are, what does efficacy mean, and so on and so forth in this context, I'm not going to worry about. Then similarly, I'm going to focus on for example. But the moment I see for example, it means it's an instance of something. I should know this. Everyone should know this. The value for treatment for a progressive disease may vary according to the patient's stage of the disease. How many of you just looked at this and said, let me figure out what a progressive disease is? How many of you did that? How many of you did that? Let me figure out what a progressive disease is. How many of you did that? I'm not asking you to give me an example of a progressive disease, and you should do it. I mean, I understand some of you may know it from just your common knowledge, but you're not required to know this unless the passage explicitly describes it. This is not a term you're required to know. Okay, but what you should be able to infer is that the value. What does the value of something mean? What's the definition of value? It's not cost. This is what you should know, not progressive disease. No, what's the definition of value? It's not importance. Well, we'll call it importance, but what's the technical definition of value? Forget about the treatment. It's not quality. Not ethic. Again, forget about this context. What is value as in general? Worth is a good way of saying value, but it's not benefits. Value in very simple words. And this is what you need to know in RC. This is what value is. Benefit minus cost. When you say something is worth it, what you're really saying is, hey, the benefits that accrue because of that action, they are higher than the cost that accrues because of that action. Now, for some people, dieting is worth it because the benefits that come because of it is it's higher than the cost that accrue. Some of you, you guys are here studying for the GMAT on Saturday is worth it because you see the benefits are higher than the cost, which is, putting in the effort, putting in hours, taking time away from your families, friends, and all. That's what value is, regardless of what context we are talking about. Does that make sense? This is what you need to know. Not progressive disease, but what's value, what's benefit, what's cost. That's common knowledge. That's what the GMAT expects you to know. So the value of a treatment for a progressive disease may vary according to the patient's stage of the disease. They say, hey, how much improvement could that bring about? Which means benefit minus cost as an improvement could vary as per the patient's stage of disease for something called a progressive disease. I don't know what it is, but I can infer this. Patient's ages may also affect her. So there's another factor, which is patient's ages, that may also affect tell me how good a treatment is. That's it. Can you really see how we focused on things which honestly is what you should be able to infer without having a technical knowledge in this area? How, again, we're kind of taking the passage type out, but what we are going in deep is on these terms. Value, still, be small. Although the keywords, those are things you got to know inside out. Should we go into examples in deep? Again, no, you should infer what you have to get into. What's the purpose of those examples? So there's not going to be a technical question about what a progressive disease is. You're not going to get an application question which says, hey, if this is a progressive disease, and then this happens, then tell me what's going to happen. No, you're not a subject matter expert there. But you should be able to infer where you really say, hey, that if stage one, if a patient is in stage one of a progressive disease versus stage three, that then the improvement that we can expect from a certain treatment could be different based on the information that's there. That's what you should be able to infer. That's all. And you can infer it from here. Right? Does that make sense? Okay. Again, remember, this is background agnostic. GMAT RC, the entire GMAT's background agnostic. But it expects you to know what evaluate, what criticize, what define means. It expects you to know what deemed means and how it's used in context and the visualization that it leads to. Why? Because business leaders are supposed to know this. Okay. So let's go forward. We're talking about the main point question. We're going to go through questions and answers. Passage one, question one. This is how you guys polled. 53% of you got this right, but you can really see choice C and choice C are also popular here. So it's the main point of the passage. Main point of the passage, what is the author doing? He's presenting two proposals by FNM, right? When you think about it, he's presenting two proposals by FNM and giving the details of how FNM think that these proposals are going to improve medical research. Correct? Pre-thinking? Was that hard? The author is presenting two proposals while giving details as to how these proposals are likely to improve medical research from an FNM standpoint. It's very wordy, but it's there. It gives you context. Is this clear? Is this clear? Okay. So the reason you see me look down is because I have my dog here who wants me to pet him. So, all right. With that, let's look at how you guys polled. This is how you guys polled, and one person chose choice A, identifying two medical practices that may affect the accuracy of trials. Okay, we have two medical practices, absolutely there. But does the author say this is going to make trials more accurate? Does the author say, hey, earlier the trials made these faults, but now these trials would not make these errors. Does the author say that anywhere in the passage? No. Someone who chose this inferred the meaning of accuracy incorrectly. And people do make that mistake. Okay. So no one chose choice B, people chose choice C, evaluating an analysis. What does evaluation mean? We talked about this. What does evaluation mean? Pros and cons, right? Pros and cons. Everyone remembers that? So if evaluating what? An analysis, right? Does the author really say, here is where this analysis is good, here is where this analysis is bad? No. If you had just read these three words and understood the passage, you would have said this choice cannot be true. The author doesn't say these are the pros of this analysis, these are the cons of this analysis. The author is not saying this is where F and M are correct, this is where F and M are wrong. Right? Can't be wrong. Cannot be there. Choice D, which is correct, describing proposed changes. Yes, it's F and M's proposal. The author is describing that to ways in which clinical trials are conducted. So the author is purely describing the changes that F and M they're proposing. This is absolutely correct. Choice E, a couple of people chose that, explaining how medical researchers have traditionally conducted trials. Is that the reason why the author has written this passage, to explain how medical researchers traditionally conduct this trial? When you think about it, when the author starts this passage, F and M propose, that's the beginning of the passage. Then could the purpose of the passage be, hey, this is how medical researchers have traditionally conducted clinical trials? No. And how such trials are likely to change? Do we know that F and M's proposal is going to be accepted? No, we don't know that. So half of you got this right. The other half got this wrong. But tell me, which of these incorrect answer choices is a close answer choice and why? Had you understood the passage, would any of the wrong ones would they have confused you? Had you understood the passage and understood the answer choices themselves? Tell me, take a pause. If you say yes, then you're saying yes, something else would have confused me. If that is the case, then you have to tell me which answer choice would have confused you and why. You were lost. But then, are you lost now? Are you lost now? When you look at choice E now, are you lost now? Right? So what caused that confusion? Why was he attractive to you? Why was he attractive then, and why is it not attractive now? That's the question you have to answer, because this is what I call as this is what I call as a low risk environment. Here, making a mistake doesn't cost you anything. But then on the exam, you don't want to make the mistake. Author wants to change the methods. Does the author want to change the methods? Do you have any evidence where the author says F&M's recommendation must be implemented? Does the author say that anywhere? No. Does the author say that these recommendations should be implemented? In C, it is mentioned that cost is high. Okay. But is that what C is talking about? Is that what C is talking about? C is talking about evaluating an analysis. All of this part over here is what this analysis is of. Okay. C is not talking about shortcomings. The person who says it is mentioned. When you say it is mentioned in the passage, then what you're really saying is I'm doing pattern matching, right? When you say it is mentioned in the passage, you're saying I'm doing pattern matching, correct? How much do MBAs get paid after graduation again? How much do MBAs get paid? In the US, about $200,000. Do you think someone who wants to get paid 200 grand should do pattern matching? Something that computers do practically free of charge? Okay, again, don't do pattern matching. Go deep. The fact that you're still thinking C is close means that you're not going deep, means you're still studying for the test. Don't study for the test. For choice E, the first part of the choice seems correct. Okay. This is something that the author has done. Doesn't mean that's why the author has written the passage. Okay. When someone's running, let's say I'm a tennis player. Okay. And as a tennis player, I'm doing a lot of running. And if someone's asking and I explain my entire workout regimen to you, all right, and to improve essentially to tell you how I'm trying to improve my game. Now, if someone takes that passage and really says, uh, the purpose of this passage is to explain how much Rajat runs, that'd be absolutely wrong. Because what I was doing is explaining why I have a regimen in the way that I do, not how much I run. That is not the purpose of that passage. It would be mentioned in it that how much I run. That information would be there. It likely consume a lot of space, but that's not why I would have written this, and that would not be the main point of my explanation. Do you understand the difference of something that's written there versus something that's the purpose of doing something, which is the main point? Okay, really critical that we understand this. And the initial set of passages, yes, there were two practices or two proposals and were against two practices. Were there two proposals? Yes. Was each proposal against a distinct practice? Yes. The first one was, what was the first practice that this proposal was against? Collecting too much information. What was the second practice? Only enrolling ideal group of patients. Right? Proposal one, practice one. Proposal two, practice two. Correct? Everyone understands this? Okay. This one, really important you understand the question. Let me tell you how you guys polled before I go into the question here. Choice A was the correct answer. Half of you got it right. You can really see that 53% is a very common notion here in this case. Okay. Question 2 says, which of the following can be inferred from the passage about a study or the category of patients referred to in the line, in these lines? So let's focus on these lines. Often researchers restrict study participation to patients who have no ailments. Okay, so this is the current way of doing things. And what can we infer about this study? So what can we infer about this study over here? So that's what the question is talking about. Okay, and when you look at this over here, what you can really see is that, yeah, over here, treatments just successful under these ideal conditions can then be evaluated. So the first is, hey, the results are limiting because you need a two-step process. The second is, such studies can only cover ideal conditions and not real or normal conditions, which again is why you need the second step over here. Is the pre-thinking clear? Is this clear? And you can really see. I'm just going back to the passage, or in fact, most of the times I won't even need to go back. I'll just pre-think this in my mind before I go to the answer choices. And its findings may have limited applicability, something that fits in line with this. Let's just look at what is it that you guys chose. I'm going to go back to B, C, and D. D is really common here. Choice B says it will be expensive to create under ideal conditions. Again, cost not mentioned here. I don't know why someone would choose cost. Cost is mentioned about the first study, not this first proposal, not the second proposal. So again, not relevant here. It would be the best way to sample the total population. That's opposite of it. I mean, FNM want to change the way to sample from this, so you can't really infer that it's the best way. Choice D is chosen by people who are just mixing two proposals. These are two independent proposals. Remember, not only, but also two independent things. Limiting information collection, proposal 1, not proposal 2. Again, people who do pattern matching actually say, oh, lots of the passage matches here. Let me choose this piece. Who taught you pattern matching? I mean, honestly, when growing up in India, I know this was something that a lot of teachers taught us. Honestly, some of the worst things in RC, or in fact on the GMAT. How many of you know AI or use AI in some form? You do, okay. How many of you look at AI benchmarks? Anyone looks at AI benchmarks to really say why is it that uh, uh, O1's better than 4.0, O3 is better than 4.0? You do, okay. Which benchmarks do you look at? LMS QA, GPQA Diamond? When you look at those, humanities graders evaluation or whatever it is. A lot of these benchmarks have just two things. If you were to really look at two dimensions there. The first dimension is how long can something maintain context, which is kind of what you see in GMAT RC. The length of the passage, can you maintain context? Can you maintain linkages within there? The second is the model's ability to draw inferences. Okay, can it link information? Fundamentally, all of those. I mean, there's a third dimension to it. It'll say what extent of knowledge does it have with regards to physics, chemistry, and all of that stuff. But all of that comes only after these first two dimensions. If it can't draw inferences, then you may have all the information of the world. It will only be able to do pattern match and not answer your questions faithfully, which is what Google would do in its Google search days, right? But it's the inference and maintaining context that makes large language models different from your traditional search. Correct? That's why they're able to answer your questions way better than most humans can. Okay. Missed out on crucial info. Two separate practices are mentioned. I repeat such mistakes. Is it due to limited understanding of the passage or inability to simplify the passage? Both are one and the same. If you're not able to simplify it, then you would have limited understanding. So the limited understanding is an effect of the cause, which is inability to simplify. So you've got to learn how to simplify. There's a cause and effect link there. Does that help? When you don't simplify something, you have a limited understanding of it. Okay. Now, why did we talk about LLMs? And again, some of you may say this is extremely technical. Yes, it is technical to a degree, but I want to make sure you guys understand this that Inference, this is not something that you're doing just for GMAT RC. You need to be able to do this well. The GMAT's just a means to an end. That end is MBA, which again is a means to an end, which is a job after an MBA. And that job after MBA is going to go away if you can't draw good inferences. How many of you have heard about the fact that placements have been lower post MBA? How many of you have heard about it? Okay. One of the big reasons, and they are lower to a certain degree. Most schools are fine, but some schools such as Harvard have suffered. And if you are connected with me on LinkedIn, I think in end of Feb, I presented a bunch of research reports around it. We did a lot of deep research. We reached out to thousands and thousands of students to really do that. But essentially, if you don't have skills, if you simply focus on networking, you're going to find jobs are hard. If you have skills, domain knowledge, as well as AI knowledge, you're going to find you will not have one, but 5 or 6 jobs. So the nature of MBA by itself is changing. Let me just share. So if you connect with me or Pyle on LinkedIn, you're going to really see me talk about how B schools by themselves are changing with regards to changing their curriculum on AI. Who are the top professors in various B schools? What are the top courses at various B schools? Our evaluation of those courses and all. You're going to see that. How many of you are read the Financial Times rankings? How many of you read that? Or US news that came out just now? US news, okay. So we just released a parallel ranking, which is derived from US news. I think was a really good ranking, by the way. And we created a ranking for Indians. It's on my LinkedIn. It's a detailed 10-page analysis of a ranking that's derived from US news ranking. We took all their data, ran models on it, and so we created one just for Indians. And I'm getting demand to create one for South Americans and Latin Americans as well. So we're gonna be doing that as well. So you go on my LinkedIn, you can see that post. Okay, let's look at question 3. It can be inferred from a passage that a study limited to patients like those mentioned in these lines, blah 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 blah, would have which are the following. So this is a really tricky question. A lot of you did well on this. What we're really saying is we have the traditional way of doing things, and we're saying what would be the advantage of that over the proposal of FNM. Now, the passage doesn't talk about the advantage of the current way of doing things. You truly have to understand what FNM are proposing, what is it that what's the current way of doing things, and only then you can draw this inference. Okay. So how many of you understood this, that this is what the question was asking? Okay. So what's the given way? I only enroll an ideal set of patients. What's the proposed way? I enroll everyone. And Charles, thank you for acknowledging that this is you kind of understood that. That's really helpful. Proposed way is to enroll a bunch of people. So what would be the advantage of the given way? The advantage of given way would honestly be that it probably would be easier to analyze information. That's what I would say. But again, even if you did not do the pre-thinking because it was difficult, this is much more of an open-ended question. If you had that context, you'd be able to get to the answer through a POV, process of elimination. Choice says it would yield more data. If you have a limited set of patients with just one ailment, it will not yield more data. Okay, and findings will not be more accurate. Someone who chose this again was attracted to somehow proposal 1. Cost again was not mentioned here. Limiting the number of variables is with the correct inference. If you only enroll patients with that one problem, of course, you won't have to analyze other aspects of patients because, again, they just have that. Choice D was popular. It would help researchers identify subgroups of patients. A lot of people chose this. Why? Because they again did pattern matching and they really did not understand what the question was about. The question wasn't about FNM's proposal, it was about the current way of doing things. Disadvantages of the second proposal of FNM, which is what choice D is saying. So if you understood the question, if you weren't simply doing pattern matching, you would not choose this choice. Okay. Question 4. Why does the author mention patients' ages? What's the purpose of it? This I expected much higher accuracy. Why? Because the reason why the author mentions this is very simple to pre-think. It says, hey, it's an example of the benefit of the proposed rule. It's a benefit that the author wants to highlight. That's basically it. Okay. And choice C, indicate why progressive diseases may require different treatments. Does the passage show you why progressive diseases require different treatments? Can you give me a reason from the information in the passage? I'm going to show the passage. Here is the passage. Why? The value of a treatment for a progressive disease may vary according to the patient stage. Does this tell you why progressive diseases require different treatments at different stages? Does it say that, oh, some pathogen is going to multiply uh, X times, so you need treatment A versus treatment B versus treatment C? Does the passage have any of that mentioned? Absolutely not. If the passage had that information mentioned, then you could have chosen this answer choice, not otherwise. Is that clear? 5 of you who chose choice C. Why choice C is absolutely incorrect. Again, understand where you're getting this. Read the answer choice, what this answer choice is saying, and then ask yourself, what should the passage contain for that answer choice to be correct? If you just ask that question, you'd find it's a lot easier to reject it. Okay. Choice D is correct. It's illustrate a point about value and it's the benefit of enrolling more patients. It's just an example of that. That's what we pre-thought. And this is in line with that. Okay. Which of the following describes the result of which of the way in which researchers generally conduct trials? Again, we're talking about the current way of doing things, and result of which means an outcome of which. Okay, we have 2 proposals. We should have 2 pre-thinkings here, and then one of them should be in the answer choices. The first proposal is, hey, generally researchers collect a lot of data that leads to higher costs, wastage of resources. So that's the result. Costs are more, money is wasted, resources, excessive resources are used in storage. That's one result. Either one of these 3 things could be in the answer choice. The result of 2, the second one is, only enroll ideal set of patients, which means the real world applicability is limited. We already saw that in one of the other questions, and or you have to do a 2-step process. That's also the result of it. All of this would have been correct. That's my pre-thinking. I want to do that before I go into the answer choices. Okay. Choice A is along the lines of this. That is absolutely correct. A lot of you chose choices B and C as well. 27% of you, 4 of you chose choice A. That is correct. But let's look at choices B and C. They sometimes compromise the accuracy of their findings by collecting and analyzing more information. Again, where does the author say accuracy of the findings? They compromise on this. The author says they waste resources, they analyze too much information, but he's never mentioned they compromise on the accuracy. Okay. Choice C says the avoid the risk of overlooking variables. Now, avoiding something means not doing something. If you avoid studying, you didn't study. If you avoided a highway, you never took a highway. If you avoided paying taxes, you did not pay taxes. That's what avoiding something is. Let's go over here. The risk was never entirely eliminable. If it's never entirely eliminable, can you avoid it? If it's still small, is it avoidable? Absolutely not. 4 out of 5 last incorrect. Yes, last one was extremely challenging. Was I mean, a lot of people got this wrong. But you can really see the correct answer, absolutely correct. The incorrect one, absolutely incorrect. The person who got all wrong, you've got to start with shorter passages. You've got to learn how to read short passages. You've got to build reading strategies. If you got four, fewer than four correct, because the first four were reasonably medium difficulty questions, got to go back to reading. If you got just the fifth wrong, then you've got to refine. That's just a symptom that I can tell you. Okay. Now, how do you, if you just got the fifth one correct, then that is by fluke. Let me be very clear. You can't get the first four wrong and the fifth one correct. Okay. So a lot of your EG matters. So I'm going to also show you how will you build that skill. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen here. So when you go to the eGMAT portal, you're going to first do the master comprehension course. All right. Um, and if you've not synced your plan, you should sync it if you are an old timer. But in this course, we're going to teach you how a sentence is built. We start with two-word sentences. Literally, this is the foundation. Then we teach you while reading how to pause and how to understand meaning. Then again, we extend that to understanding meaning, extremely long sentences here. Even over here, we go from a 2 word to a 30-word sentence. Okay, this is just reading, purely reading, no inferences, or very simple inferences. Then, as you go towards RC, okay, we teach you reading strategies. We then teach you main points. So every concept's taught, every concept's evaluated independently. Then it's inference, then it's detail, then it's structure. Then you go through a set of application files. So there, but each one of these. So reading strategies is about 8 passages in there. Main point is about 7 to 8. Actually, no, main point is about 12 to 13 passages. Inference has about 8 to 9 passages. So when you're learning each concept, you're doing about 20 to 30 examples, and that reinforces a lot of the learning. Then you go into application. Here again, you have about 9 passages in there, which are just at a medium level. So you're talking about at about 30, 35 questions. Then you have about 7 hard passages. Okay, this is just the learning piece. Then you do cementing, okay, both medium and hard. And then you go into our scholaranium. And by the way, all of this is tracked, and you get feedback on it. So every activity is tracked. You can really see the feedback that you can really see you have over here. So we have an AI-based system. This is something that we launched, pre-generative AI. This is all using analytics and code-based AI, where every file's graded, and you get a grade A or B or C. And then the value of this is that every 30 minutes you get feedback which tells you, should you be revising this file? If so, for what? Let's look at grade B over here in this case. And you can really see that there are a couple of activities where this person has gotten a grade B here, in this case. If you get good grades, you can see learning level, A are excellent grades here, and somewhat B is a median grade. It's not the greatest, but it's not the worst either. Then you'll be in a great position to do well. So if I go into verbal scholaranium, which is, after the learning, this is a completely different practice platform. If I look at hard accuracy, last 20 questions, 70% accuracy in last 20 is the 90th percentile ability in hard questions. And you can really see this person, actually, her name is Leela. If you go on our YouTube channel, you can see her debrief. Um, she actually ended up getting a 695. She started at a 555, and you can see her journey over here on the mocks as well. Okay. So hopefully that was useful. I'm going to share the session PDF, so so you guys can can let me just hide the pod and give you the session PDF. So you guys can practice the passages as well here. And again, we have the arithmetic session tomorrow. Make sure you attend that as well. And then here is my LinkedIn as well as our YouTube channel. All right, with that, hopefully you guys like the session. We'll have the recording on YouTube fairly soon. With that, as we always say, happy learning. Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye, and have a great day.